Hey, what's going on? So, we played a little bit of Soul Frame. Played a lot of it actually. Did about 8 hours on stream and then about 6 more off. And it's still in the alpha phase. Um, so there's a lot for them to work on. But overall, I'd say the game was really fun. Combat's been fun. I mean, if you played Warframe at all, the moving, the mechanics in terms of moving is very similar. Combat's smoother. um, Ability to play with weapons is easy. Leveling up is easy. Some of the biggest takeaways from playing with it, though, that I enjoyed, we'll start with the pros. Um, Seamless combat. Even in terms of not being able to lock on, which I don't know if they haven't added yet, or you're not able to see in the alpha with the control options. But even without being able to do that, the combat's very seamless. There's a lot of combos you can do with your weapon and, of course, your Aether Sight that allows you to use your Fey abilities to do different stuff with it. Um, Very smooth overall. It doesn't feel like it's overwhelmingly difficult. Where if you just have to master everything, but it does feel like there is a skill cap in terms of being able to parry, perfect parry, etc., and then combo those into attacks. And so you can fight multiple people at the same time, close range, and provided you don't spastically press your buttons and you counter them correctly, you got a good way to do it. The second thing is the open world. Um, you're a little limited because of how much they have actually released, but in terms of it, it's very similar to Warframe. You have the kind of open world events, but in this case, rather than going through multiple instances, having to go to ship, start a new mission, etc., it's one open world, and they have events constantly going on once you've done some of the quests and stuff. And so, very seamless, very smooth transition into it, where it does feel a little as when you go into certain areas, you know when you're transitioning into a zone because it'll do the whole load scene, but you don't really pay attention to it nearly as much because there's not really any downtime in terms of load screens, etc. So super good with it. They don't have the ability to customize your talents just yet. Obviously, there's a lot of unique talents where you can turn your melee weapon into a thrown weapon, and you can do some customization with that. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of skill uh, options available in terms of how you want to play. I think the skill trees are pretty diverse in terms of what you can do. Still standard in terms of you can build a parry build that allows you to do more damage. You can turn your melee weapon to a thrown weapon, and then you can knock them down with that and do more damage. And then of course you can supplement some of your other stuff with it. The In terms of the story, it's a little wild, right? It's not a terrible story so far. Obviously, there's not enough context yet to really piece it all together. But and I don't want to include necessarily any spoilers in this, but good story so far. It's different, right? But still kind of unique in terms of the storytelling that he does. Um, the overall upgraded engine. I know I mentioned that it plays kind of off the Warframe universe, but they did a really good job with the art. Very unique in terms of the scenery. Um, the customization of the characters. There's a lot of minor details on the characters themselves, the cloaks, the movement, sounds. You can hear animals moving in the woods, and it sounds exceptionally. I mean, you can literally pinpoint where they're at. So very good, precise kind of sound location stuff. Um, you have as well, of course, the the enemies are unique. At least in terms of the different stuff that they do, and not all of them are scripted to just behave like bots. Now there is still some issues with some of the bosses themselves. They don't have as wide a range of movement yet, so I'd like to see some improvements on that. But enemies have unique stuff. I mean, they have throwing. They can blow themselves up. Some of them will do a combination of different things with it. So pretty good for it. So overall, overall, those are the kind of the primary pros. Some of the cons that I've seen with the game so far, and again, remember this is pre-alpha, so there's still a lot of work for them to focus on. The crafting system. And my biggest contention with the crafting system isn't necessarily farming the materials. That's pretty standard in any game that you have to craft, right? It's the wait time for crafts. I had to make a weapon. It took me 10 hours to craft that weapon. I do not like this. I think in this day and age, being time gated that long on crafting a weapon or crafting items is just stupid. And I only dislike it simply because if I have to wait that long to get my dopamine fix for my hard invested effort of farming the materials, which by the way it's time consuming itself, I have now lost interest in that weapon. And the worst part is that especially in this game, because it follows a very similar suit of leveling up your weapons like Warframe did, I now have to level this new weapon up, so I get a power decrease, and I just waited 10 hours for this weapon to be made, hoping it would be better, and now I'm in a situation where I have less power, I've wasted 10 hours waiting, and now I'm not that satisfied with it. So it's very incongruent with like the player progression. When I get a new weapon, I should feel powerful, or when I'm able to craft a new series of weapons, I should at least not feel like it was bittersweet in terms of my rewards with it. So I would love for them to see to expand on this, either eliminate the craft times or find a different way to do the crafting that doesn't really disable your satisfaction from the game. It seems very minor, but when you talk about players, especially in the instance from traditional MMOs and from some of the games in the last 5 years, if I'm able to craft something immediately, what am I going to do? I'm going to equip it, I'm going to try and run with it. So they can really lose engagement with players that try and engage with the systems just simply because it's kind of outdated and time gating kind of sucks. It just is what it is. Obviously, we talked about it. The boss movements need tuning. Overall, I don't think the boss encounters are terrible. There's a deer boss that you fight that literally you just move to the side of him and you kill him, and it was very remedial. Like, you didn't have to put a lot of effort into it. And from the normal NPCs or bots that you fight versus the bosses are very unscary. So maybe add some challenge to that and find ways to do it. Again, maybe they just haven't gotten to that portion yet, but could take some advantage with it. This is kind of a subset of crafting, but the resources, farming, and again, they just maybe not included all the points into them yet. Resource farming doesn't feel engaging, and farming never truly does, right? Either you like it or you don't like it. But having to go around and farm the very specific same things over and over and over again to farm these deals just to get components to, again, have reduced player power, it's very unrewarding. I hope as they develop more into this game, they include ways to kind of naturally acquire items or naturally acquire resources, so you're not having to do a lot of backtracking early on to farm materials. I know it's kind of a staple for their games. I understand Warframe was like that. I think it's one of the biggest pitfalls of these types of games is that if I have to go back and farm something 1,000 times, when new content is released in that area or when new content is released just generally, you've already got people who are depleted from wanting to do it because of how disengaged they've become just from having to farm that. So burnout's kind of a natural reality of games. You should be able to play a game, put it down when you want. If you're trying to create longevity with it, especially if you're running with a genre that's very similar to something previously done, you just have to be very mindful that people may be used to it, but doesn't mean they're going to stick with it. So I think resource farmings could use some improvements. I think naturally if there was a way to break down, maybe picked up weapons or find a way to collect more items or gear or whatever, even if it's passively increasing it with your character level. So if I get level 5, for instance, I'm now able to get X amount more with it. I think weapon progression, I don't think this is necessarily a con. I can tell you though, in doing it, leveling up your your talents, and then your weapons as well. They feel impactful, but not necessarily that impactful. Again, not being able to play with your talents and other options yet, it's very hard to know what what it's going to look like overall. So this is again just very kind of short criticism of it. Um, but what do I get out of my weapon progression? You know, just having a level 100 weapon, does it actually cause me to be more impactful when I still look at my character level of being level 2? It just doesn't seem very conjoined in terms of how I see it. So if I'm level 2 and I've got a level 100 weapon, what am I really doing with my life? Is it actually improving me or is it not? I will say that there is a little inconsistency in the questing. It's not a bad thing. Honestly, it really complements the ability to explore. We'll put exploration on that. Complements. As a pro, complements exploration. You do have a helper that kind of guides you through the questing, a little bird that you can summon that goes through it. But still, it's a little... It would be hard to follow if you just weren't kind of present or open to the idea of exploring stuff. I found a lot of the objectives just by exploring, but I also ran in the opposite direction of telling me to go for the first 30 to 40 minutes of the game. So that's one area that they could, I think, could significantly improve on and probably find a little bit more success with it. Again, they're still rolling out a lot of components with it. These are just areas that I want to see probably worked on the most. I'm just one individual with an opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong, but these are things that, having played enough games over the last 30 years of my life, I feel like these are the areas that where if they improve them significantly, or if we saw drastic improvements kind of through this alpha and beta phase, that we'd probably see some significant uptick in terms of wanting to play the game and desirability with it. So, so really it's kind of a short list of pros and cons. Obviously, I'm trying to be a little bit less particular because they're still in pre-alpha phase, right? Or the prelude phase, as they call it. Things that I kind of hope for, hopes to see, would be things like more variety in bosses, more variety in like mini bosses / events. So they have these events that call down. There's a couple that are active that you go through. One's like killing guards. The other's a ship that comes down that summons a mini boss. I like to see more mini bosses and events, but not like just redundant. We see these 5 over and over again. It would be nice to see some like cycle progression where you do one quest and then you got 6 or 7 kind of chain event quests that come after it. I'd like to see, in terms of weapons, I know more weapons. Obviously, they have your five sets of items: your swords, shields, two-handed weapons, your pole arms, etc. I like to see a variety in the weapons in terms of it. Maybe some customization in terms of like whips or flails or some other mechanics that typically don't get ventured into for obvious technical reasons, right? And of course, they're still releasing content as they go with it. I'd like to see some customization in terms of the armors or how you acquire more options to acquiring gear. Crafting pieces is fine. Collecting components to craft those pieces is fine. But is there ever an opportunity to get just whole drops? Is there an opportunity to get stuff that's already pre-built? If we retain our crafting system that we do, is there a way to circumvent that time period? Because acquiring gear feels good, getting gear feels great. If I can get gear and put it on right away, and I don't have to worry about both process leveling up, I feel really good about myself. So we'd love to see them kind of venture down that path with it. And then of course, really, just how they expand the map. How they expand the map. I look forward to kind of see how they do this. The map is huge. There's a lot of areas that they've gone into it. I will say that they've done a good job with the lands that they have available for you to play on, utilizing every inch of it to do quests, etc. I really want to see how they can expand that out kind of further with it in terms of what they can do. And then, of course, multiplayer. Um, if you're a fan of the Warframe franchise, you've probably done the PvP at least once in there. I think Warframe PvP was a lackluster in a lot of different areas. It was unrewarding and there wasn't much to do with it. I would love for them to see how they implement multiplayer in this game in terms of versus mode. Would love for them to see maybe they open it to duels, some different opportunities there to really let you challenge other players in meaningful ways and directness to it. And then of course your co-op mode. I don't know if there's a co-op mode present. I haven't had a chance to play with anybody. I did give some friend codes out. But I want to see how it kind of functions. Does it actually increase the power of the map? Does it make the maps more difficult? Are there better rewards for it? Am I penalized in any ways? Are there any reductions in enjoyment of the game by having someone in my game? Does it force me to basically be a solo player? Or can I play with friends or kind of seamlessly go in between playing with groups? And then of course kind of subset of that is it going to be where I only play with 3 other people at a time? And am I restricted in terms of what I can do in this very small world and a big world type situation? Or will it be where I can play with multiple people kind of at the same time, kind of go in and out of groups, etc.? So would love for them to see how they expand on this in terms of their settings and kind of as they go through these alpha and beta progressions. I'm very excited for it. So overall, it's a great game. If I were to rate it just solely off this prelude phase, I'd say this game probably has the potential to be a number 1 game in 2025 when it gets released, or at least when they release their full beta, etc. I think this game has that potential. It comes from a company who spends a lot of time developing good systems. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially because they have Warframe as their foundation. They can pull a lot of good assets over and make them still capable of being used here, but it needs to be done. So hopefully they can make that work. Hopefully they can piece those all together and put some magic together with them. I think they have a lot of good things that they can work with. They've done a very good job, and if starting off with it, and it feels like they did kind of copy paste some stuff over from Warframe to start for their foundation. But new engine looks great. The scenery is amazing. The combat system's good. Obviously, if they can work through some of the kind of data systems like the crafting system, etc., and the level progression, I think they've got some good opportunities to make it work. So, if you guys appreciate this, please hit the subscribe button below. Every follow helps me as much as it can. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about it, if you want more in-depth in-game playthroughs, I'm posting all my streams. I'm streaming on Twitch, but I'm also posting my streams on YouTube as well, so you can see them. I'll be streaming this probably 3 or 4 times a week, so you guys can kind of see the different interactions with it. And then as they make updates, I'll try and keep you guys posted with it. So again, appreciate your time, and until next time, see you then.